to 3 minutes. Now, as soon as they're finished with that first argument, you have 2 minutes to prepare a response. Here is where the whip comes into play. As soon as those first 2 minutes are up, you will hear that bell, which means your 2 minutes to actually present your response to what was said by the affirmative side. Remember, to what was said. You have up to 2 minutes to do that. Your first argument.
Good morning. My name is Ruby Bautista again. It has long been believed by the scientific community that the gender identity of a child was determined by the child's upbringing, surrounding environment, and the way the child was treated during growth. This was caused by a complete lack of understanding of gender identity. Since then, studies have been done on transgender children, babies with deformed genitalia, entirely based on nature and is almost exclusively predetermined before the birth of the baby. Dr. William Reiner conducted 2 studies in which he followed 26 boys whose male hormone levels and testicles were normal at birth but were born without penises. In the first study, 12 of the boys were surgically reconstructed to appear female. Reiner found that these boys, even though raised as girls by their parents, this story provides an eye-opening education of the impact of human hormones, the development of gender identity, and the power of nature, which is why we stand firmly in defense of today's resolution that gender identity is a product of nature. As Dr. Reiner puts it, these studies suggest that male gender identity is directly have developed despite a total environment telling them they were female. This new outlook has caused the scientific community to reevaluate the use of sex reassignment surgery on infants, and parents are now urged to let their children decide
Okay, so your 2 minutes of conferral starts now, start now, and after the 2 minutes, you'll respond to what was said just now.
First of all, we as the negative team would like to start by saying that science has proven that hormones just affect gender identity. The scientific community did believe that upbringing was one of the main ways that gender identity was caused, but you're just focusing on how the upbringing was made, but we're not focusing entirely on the person. Well, nature does not affect how people choose. As you stated before, almost entirely based on nature, the scientists concluded that gender identity was almost entirely based on nature, and therefore nature is just a way of affecting gender identity. And you then also stated that children decide on their own, but who says that nature causes human beings to choose by themselves? That is all. Thank you.
Okay, so that was your response of John Paul to the first argument by Galen. It's now your opportunity now to present your first argument. And the same thing applies here, Galen. You must listen to what is being said by Pope John Paul, and then you have your 2 minutes to confer. And remember, your response must be based on what is presented.
We do not approve of the resolution because there is so much bias in saying that one's personal conception, gender identity, is truly a product of nature. First of all, nature in itself is an objective reality. How I perceive myself, on the other hand, is something subjective. It is a choice. Do I see myself as beautiful or unattractive, fat or skinny, valuable or worthless, male or female? We cannot create our own reality, but we can choose how we perceive reality and ourselves, even when this may mean that, unfortunately, our perception is wrong. Therefore, we believe that gender identity is the product of choice, not of nature. We would like to defend our case by stating the fact that throughout our life, and especially as developing children, we are bombarded with all sorts of messages about identity, and often these messages don't even agree with each other. For example, at home you might be told that pants are for boys, but when you go out you see a lot of girls wearing pants. Back in the 1960s, women were considered the servants of men and that their place was in the kitchen. According to CNN, women could not even get a credit card without a husband and without his approval. Then there were those who probably believed that this was not all women amounted to. But one of the best examples of contradictions is, for example, when a person's external characteristics tell him he is a male, and inside he feels like everything is telling him he's a female. If gender identity were really the product of nature, how do we solve this one when they are certainly not saying the same thing? Furthermore, society has different expectations from men and women, perhaps often based on stereotypes, but stereotypes vary by culture. For instance, in India, women are considered inferior to men and should therefore be submissive, according to the encyclopedia.com. Then there are other places like here in Belize, where if you're a woman and you want to work, you can work and can get your own credit card without your husband's approval. Each culture has an idea of what men and women should be and behave like. You might fit in the picture or you might not. Maybe you were told at some point that cooking is for women, but what if you like cooking and feel no less masculine? The point is, each individual is different. And if we are going to say that gender identity is the product of nature, we are saying that across the border, this works for everybody. And yet there's people struggling out there with whether they are male or female. Thank you.
Your 2 minutes starts, your conferral, 2 minutes for conferral, and then as soon as you hear the bell, you respond to what was said just now.
the opponents, I clearly heard that you use the word choice more than once. From where the choice comes? Of course, it comes from oneself. How does it come from oneself? From our choice, from our brain. And our brain is influenced by hormones that were developed within us even before our birth. We have also noticed that you claim that society back in the days, female were morally expected to be in the kitchen. All of these things are gender roles or probably gender expression, totally different from gender identity. We cannot see how you are linking gender identity to nature here. All you are linking is gender expression and gender roles. Of course, gender roles can be influenced by society. We can clearly see that, but we are not here to discuss gender expression nor gender roles. We're here to debate on the topic of gender identity. I close my case.
Well, let me just tell you, you now have to still continue your case. You have a second argument to present, but I heard what you said. Now it's your opportunity to present your second argument.
We would like to introduce a few more scientific studies that together prove that gender identity is a product of nature. In the 1960s, a little boy, David Raymer, was undergoing a regular circumcision, but the operation went terribly wrong and his penis was destroyed. A sexologist who believed that gender identity could be changed by environmental factors recommended to the parents to change David's genitals, put him on hormone therapy and raise him as a girl. They did. However, David was troubled, depressed, and sometimes suicidal. And he immediately reassumed his male identity as soon as his parents is 5 to 12, in which she sought to determine if their identification with the opposite sex was a result of confusion. After an in-depth analysis of their feeling, thoughts, and perception, Dr. Olson concluded that the gender identity of these children is deeply held and is not the result of preference or social environment. This conclusion is strengthened by researchers at Boston University School of Medicine who conducted a literature review of the articles that showed positive biologic base for gender identity and concluded that they provide one of the most convincing arguments to date that there is a biological etiology for transgender. Then there is this amazing condition called the congenital adrenal hyperplasia, the CAH, caused by an overproducing adrenal gland which infuses the female embryo with excess testosterone and results in a female internal reproductive organ and a small deformed penis on the outside. Dr. Eng Earhart, professor of medical psychology at Columbia University, studied 17 female CAH patients to document the impact of hormones on these girls. She noted that CAH patients were more often described as having higher level of energy expenditure, they preferred to play with boys rather than other girls, and were not very interested in playing with dolls. In conclusion, this study was amazing as Dr. Earhart pointed out that none of the girls were unsure about their gender identity. They did not feel that they were boys and being girls did not make them happy. We therefore conclude that CAH appears to have a significant effect on gender role but not on gender identity. Based on the validity and concordance of these studies as proof of the direct relation between nature and gender identity, we can't see any other vote in today's debate but one in support of today's resolution.
Okay, so you heard what was said. Again, you now have your 2 minutes to confer and then your 2 minutes to respond.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy, and in response to the arguments of the opposing side thus far, I would like first of all to mention